Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Sunday Bitcoin Show. Well, guess what? I survived the hurricane. uh, I've got one of those little mini homes, parked out in front of my house. And I'm going to tell you, I was worried that the winds would blow it over on its side. Not worried that it would wreck my mini home. It's what they call a tiny house. It's an actual tiny house. Uh, I wasn't worried so much about that, but I was worried it would, because it's tall and narrow, It's only 8 feet wide, but it's like 13 feet 6 inches tall. And I was worried that the wind would blow it over on its side because it's not real heavy, It's built on a car trailer with a double tandem wheels, made to be towed behind a big pickup truck or something. But I was worried that the wind would blow it over on its side and wreck it. And so what I did was I parked the car on one side of it, parked the car on the other side of it, and then what I did was I put ropes over the roof and tied them off with cable winches. And I'll tell you, when I got in, I rode the storm out inside the tiny home. And when I was inside, I was glad I put those cables on. Because there were several gusts that hit, and I'm telling you that they were hurricane force gusts, because I've been through hurricanes before and I know a hurricane force gust. I would say one gust in particular was around 90 miles an hour and it hit the side of my mini home, my tiny home. It would have knocked it over if I hadn't put those cables. But here I am. Anyway, I got news for you guys about Bitcoin. I'm going to lay it out for you. I'm going to get started right now. Let's start the charts right here and take a look. Now, first thing I want to show you guys is something called WeChat. Now, I know you guys are probably not, some of you might be familiar with it, but it's called WeChat. And in China, this is a multi-purpose messaging, social media, and mobile payment application that was developed in Tencent. It was first released in 2011, and it became one of the world's largest standalone mobile apps, with over 1 billion monthly active users. Everybody in China uses this for payment. It's on their phone. Let me show you how it works. It works like this. Let me focus in so you can see it. Pretend this is in a store. Now the store's got this big boxy looking thing with the check mark on, with the green check mark on it. That's in the store, and there's a phone next to it. And the phone has got this little block looking thing on it, right? All they do is just run their phone across that thing and they've paid for the merchandise. And that's what's in every store in China. And it's getting to the point now where they won't take bills. They won't take coins. They won't take anything except this WeChat. That's all you can pay in China. This is how things are paid for in China. And it's directly connected to their bank accounts. It's coming here, by the way. This is probably coming here, and very shortly. But why I'm focusing on this is I got more to show you guys. Now, here's what's happening right now in China. You got to take a look at this. Monday's sharp 1.4% drop in the Yuan, that's the Chinese currency, came days after Trump stunned financial markets by vowing to impose 10% tariffs on a remaining $300 billion worth of Chinese imports. So what do the Chinese do? They're dropping the price of their yuan by 1.4%. Boom, ba-bang, ga-bing. This is going to have side effects. This dropping the price of the yuan is going to have side effects. It's going to scare people in China who are holding large accounts of yuan. They just lost 1.4% of their money. It might not sound like much to you guys, but if you got $1 million worth of these yuan in the bank and you lose 1.4%, that's $14,000. I think I'm doing my math right. I think it's $14,000 in one day. Bunk, gone. How would you like to have somebody come in, take 14, and that's only for a $1 million person, you know? What about these people who have 100 million or a billion? How much are they losing? 1.4% of their entire wealth in one day. Do you think that's going to make them nervous? The Chinese. In the past, the Chinese have been some of the biggest buyers of Bitcoin. Some of the biggest buyers of Bitcoin in the past. Buying up to, I think it was like 95% of the Bitcoins. They can become the biggest buyers again in the future. Believe me. And one of the reasons why is, think about it. The Chinese government can say to the Chinese people, you must keep your money in the country. In other words, they're locking them in. They're saying you can't, say they got $10 million in the bank, but it's in Yuan. So it would be $10 million would be like 75 million yuan in the bank in China. And they don't know what to do with the money. They've made themselves rich because they've built all these products and shipped them overseas to America, and they've made themselves rich. They're rich Chinese, right? And the Chinese government's locked them in and said, okay, you can't get your money out of the country. Now, you can invest in real estate, but the real estate market in China now is at this point ready to roll over. They're already starting to give discounts on new properties. So what's a Chinese person to do with their money in the bank? Let's consider this carefully. There's another thing. Now, I'm going to point out something else to you guys. And these are things that are in the real world. There's something called a brain wallet. A brain wallet refers to the concept of storing bitcoins in one's own mind by memorizing a seed phrase. If the seed is not recorded anywhere, the bitcoins can be thought of as being held only in the mind of the owner. Now, there's not a country on earth that has the technology right now to stop a brain wallet. They don't have it. They can scan you. They can scan your brain. There's not a country on earth that has it. So these countries say, okay, we want to ban Bitcoin. We're going to ban Bitcoin. A guy can come waltzing right through their border with 1,000 Bitcoin in his brain, and they're never going to detect it. They can't detect it. It's impossible. So it's awfully hard to stop Bitcoins at the border and say, okay, this is it. You're not getting them into the country. A funny thing happened a while ago, you know. This guy was coming in totally innocent. He was coming into one country. I forget which country it was. But they stopped him at the border. And they said, you got Bitcoin. We're not letting you into the country. The guy says, why? And there was a logo on the side of his bag. A Bitcoin logo. That's all it was a logo. They thought it was Bitcoin. You know? And they wouldn't let him into the country because they thought he had Bitcoin. They thought the logo was just a logo, you know, artwork is all it was, just a logo, you know. He was totally innocent. But, I mean, in that same lineup where they stopped this guy and won't let him into the country because he's got a Bitcoin logo on his bag, probably the guy behind him could have had a brain wallet and they'd issue him right on through. Oh, you're fine to go. You're fine to go. And he could have a brain wallet. He could have $1 billion inside his brain wallet, and they would never know. This is the world we live in right now. If I know about this, believe me, the Chinese know about this. Paper wallets. What is a paper wallet? Well, you got your brain wallet. The tiny little private key that could store billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. In fact, at some point in the future, trillions of dollars worth of Bitcoin can be stored on a little tiny piece of paper, a little scrap of paper, so small it looks like a little piece of confetti. You know? So this is the kind of a currency that they've created, this new digital currency, Bitcoin, that is almost impossible to stop it. What about gold? Well, here you go right here about gold. Just try crossing the borders with gold. Crossing borders with gold and silver coins, a glimpse of things to come. It's well known that you have to make a declaration if you physically transport more than $10,000 or more in cash or monetary instruments. Gold could be considered a monetary instrument, in or out of the United States or almost any other country. Just try to take a few gold coins through the border and see what happens, and see if you get to be allowed to keep them. Whereas they don't have any controls over Bitcoin and cryptocurrency whatsoever to stop something like a brain wallet. They've got everything in place to stop you from moving any amount of gold. They got metal detectors. They got everything set up to stop you and confiscate it. So just try. Say you decide you're going to move to some other country or whatever, or say the Chinese want to invest their money out of the country and say they want physical gold. Oh, that's what we want. Just try to get it in. Try to get in your $50 million worth of Yuan. Try to put it into physical gold and bring it into China for the Chinese. It's proved to be impossible. Right? But not so with cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency is almost impossible to stop. Because it just runs on a little tiny data file or a little tiny private key file or even on a bunch of words that somebody could memorize in their brain. You can't stop it. So all of a sudden we got this situation where the Chinese are suddenly being threatened with having their money devalued because of the trade war. This is only going to intensify in the upcoming months. The Chinese government, this is one of their few reaction things that they actually have that they can use to fight against the trade tariffs, because when they lower the price of the yuan, they make it worth less money. In other words, with each dollar you can buy more and more yuan. So right now it's like 7.12 yuans to the dollar. Next month it might be 8.12 yuans to the dollar, and a month after that it might be 9.12 yuans to the dollar. Well, this helps them offset the tariffs, because these companies and manufacturers here to import Chinese goods, now suddenly the Chinese good is moved down cheaper to buy, offsetting the price of the tariffs. So this is China's way of offsetting the tariffs, but creating a secondary situation where the Chinese people themselves are going to be absolutely desperate to get their money out of the country and get it into something, any asset class that's going to be going in the opposite direction of the yuan, because the yuan's going to be going down. Now, in the last few days, I've been sitting here considering to myself, is it entirely possible that the yuan in this trade war could go depreciate enough to set up massive inflation in China? To set off massive inflation in China. I've been considering that possibility, because I think that this is going to continue. I don't think this trade war is going to get resolved next month. I think that both sides have dug into firmly implanted positions. Now, the trade war could get solved in the next 2 years, very possibly, but not in the next month or two. I don't think it's going to get resolved. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. So, you've been warned. The Chinese are a huge market, and their government is going to be trying to stop them from moving any yuan out of the country. Obviously. My consideration is could they, or would they, start to buy Bitcoin and use methods that the government is not aware of to be able to move the Bitcoins actually into the country, or even if they don't move them into the country, to basically, I mean, they could do things like have their relative that lives in Canada or a relative that lives in America or whatever, because Chinese people have relatives that live all over the earth, store on their computer their wealth. The Chinese government, because they have this WeChat, now I mentioned this WeChat before, are going to try to track these movements of money out of the country, looking at this WeChat very carefully. because I believe that the Chinese government can actually see where money is moving around within the system, within China, by this WeChat app. But the Chinese people in general, if they might start moving small amounts of money out anyway, because I'm going to tell you something about human nature. Human nature is when you tell somebody they can't do something. There was one country, I believe, that made coffee illegal. And all kinds of illicit speakeasy coffee houses sprung up where people would sneak into the back room or someplace so that they could sip at a cup of coffee. Now, it sounds ridiculous, but any substance that they decide that you're not going to have, that's what people are going to want. So it's the same. It becomes even more of a desperate situation if your currency is being depreciated and you tell somebody they can't have it. You can't have this. And then you start depreciating their currency so that they're losing money every day. That's going to make them want it all the more. So, huge market here. Could come online very soon. It could actually have started already affecting the price of Bitcoin. Now, you guys perfectly know well that I predicted this downturn in the price of Bitcoin ahead of time. And we've had our downturn. I think it's starting to get a little bit long in the tooth, and the reason why is because the Fed has already changed monetary policy, and I said during the downturn that we'd have to wait for this change in Fed monetary policy. Well, they did it clandestinely, right under our noses. They started to purchase bonds again, which is quantitative easing. And they're already lowering interest rates. And so the Fed's already turned. They turned while we weren't watching. I said that once the Fed turned and changed monetary policy, there's going to be a turn signal in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. I'm still expecting 16,000 a target of 16,000 on Bitcoin by the end of this year. Still expecting that, And how high it goes next year is anyone's guess, but I believe that there is going to be a collapse in the price at some point next year. But I think it's going to make it up to dizzying heights before we get the collapse in price. But it's only going to collapse because it's going to go into another bubble. That's what Bitcoin does, it's a bubble machine. It goes into an enormous bubble, then price collapses. Doesn't collapse as low as it was before the bubble started, before the big upsurge in price. And then it goes along for a little ways and then it starts to go into another bubble again. It's done that ever since its beginning until now. And there's no reason to believe that it won't continue to do this process that it's done over and over and over again. Listen, thank you guys for listening to this show. And survived the hurricane. Here I am. It was a fairly bad hurricane, It was funny. It started out, wasn't all that bad. The wind was kind of quiet, and I thought it was going to be another one of these duds. When a hurricane comes in, it just kind of nothing. You don't get much. It was the second half of it when the winds changed direction. That's when it hit us kind of hard. And that's when we got a few gusts of around, right here, I would say the gusts of 80 to 90 miles an hour. That gust that hit, and I'm glad I had the cables on the building. But it's still, it was like being in a A-grade ride at Disney World, This building was shaking. This building I'm in right now. Listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.